The scream pierced the silence of the house. "Mom, please stop." The little boy's voice cracked as tears ran down his face. His tiny hands trembled, pressed against the old wooden table as he watched the boiling kettle in his mother's grip tilt dangerously. Steam rose, stinging his eyes before the water even touched him. Fear clung to him like a shadow. The woman's face was not one of cruelty, but of desperation. Wild, exhausted, tormented by the weight of a life that had broken her long ago. Her hair hung in disarray, her lips quivering as though even she didn't believe in the threat she was holding over her child. "You don't understand, Noah," she whispered hoarsely, her voice jagged like shattered glass. "Nobody understands." But before the kettle tipped further, a sound thundered through the hallway, the heavy slam of the front door opening. Footsteps echoed across the floor with sharp certainty, filling the suffocating air with a presence both commanding and unfamiliar. And then he walked in, a tall man in an immaculate suit, his eyes scanning the scene in disbelief. His very presence seemed out of place in the dim, cluttered house, like light intruding into the darkest corner of a cave. The little boy gasped when he saw him, as if salvation itself had stepped through the door. "Noah," the man said softly, his voice a strange mixture of warmth and regret. The kettle clattered onto the counter as the woman froze, her breath hitching. She blinked, staring at the man like she was seeing a ghost. It was him, the man she had once loved, the man who had walked away, the man Noah had never met properly, the millionaire. His name was Alexander Reed. To the world he was a man of power, fortune, and respect. Newspapers wrote about his empire, his deals, his influence. But here, in this small, decaying kitchen, none of that mattered. He wasn't a tycoon. He wasn't a public figure. He was simply a man staring at the wreckage of the life he had abandoned. Noah ran toward him, not because he recognized him as a father. He barely knew the word in practice, but because something in the man's eyes promised safety. Alexander knelt down, arms wide, and the boy clung to him, sobbing into the fabric of his expensive jacket. The woman, Clara, gripped the counter, her knuckles white. "Why are you here?" she asked in a voice barely audible. Her hands trembled as if the weight of her choices had finally crashed upon her. "Because I should have been," Alexander answered, his voice breaking. "All this time, I thought success could erase the mistakes of my past, but I see now it only magnified them." He looked down at the boy in his arms, his expression softening into something achingly human. "I should have been here for him, for both of you." Clara sank into a chair, tears spilling freely now. She wasn't a monster, just a woman suffocating under poverty, grief, and loneliness. Her threats had never been about cruelty, but a desperate cry for help no one had ever heard, until now. The hours that followed changed everything. Alexander didn't leave. He cooked dinner in that worn-down kitchen, sleeves rolled up, as Noah sat at the table wide-eyed, watching a man he'd only heard of in whispers act like an ordinary father. Clara watched too, her hardened edges softening as she saw what she thought she'd lost forever. When Noah finally laughed, an innocent, childlike laugh that hadn't been heard in years, the sound filled the room like sunlight through storm clouds. Clara covered her mouth, trembling at the realization that kindness, not cruelty, was what her son needed. And Alexander. He realized that the millions he owned, the empire he built, meant nothing compared to the small boy who clung to his sleeve, unwilling to let go. The neighborhood would talk for weeks about the sleek black car that began appearing on their street every evening. They'd whisper about the man who used to belong to the world, but chose instead to belong to a little boy who needed him. Noah, once timid and bruised by fear, began to walk taller. His laughter returned, his eyes brightened. Clara too slowly healed, not because of money, but because someone finally reminded her she wasn't alone. And Alexander Reed, the millionaire who once believed power was measured in numbers, discovered the true measure of wealth, sitting across from him at a small wooden table, calling him Dad. For the very first time, the kettle rattled against the counter, steam curling upward like ghosts of what might have been. Clara's chest rose and fell in uneven waves, her body frozen between rage, despair, and disbelief. The man she had tried to erase from her heart now stood there, filling her broken kitchen with a presence she could neither reject nor welcome. Alexander Reed didn't move at first. His eyes stayed locked on her, scanning the hollowness in her cheeks, the tremble in her hands, and the deep weariness carved into her face. Years had passed, but in this dim kitchen with peeling wallpaper and chipped plates stacked carelessly in the sink, he saw not just Clara, the woman he had once loved, but the damage his absence had inflicted. And then there was Noah. The boy clung to him so tightly Alexander could feel his tiny heart pounding against his chest. His small fingers dug into the fabric of the millionaire's suit, as if afraid he would vanish like a dream. Alexander's throat constricted. For all his billions, all his influence, he realized he had never felt more powerless than he did now, kneeling on the cracked linoleum floor with this trembling boy in his arms. Clara's voice cracked the silence. "You don't belong here." Her words were sharp, but her eyes betrayed her. They shimmered with something she couldn't hide. Fear, longing, regret. Alexander swallowed hard. "Maybe not," he admitted softly, "but he does. He belongs with me. And you." His gaze lingered on her, not with judgment but with the raw ache of memory. "You shouldn't have had to carry all of this alone." Clara laughed bitterly, a sound too broken to be called laughter. "Alone? You made sure of that the day you left. You chose your empire over us, Alexander, and now you want to show up in my kitchen like some hero." Noah pulled back slightly, his wide eyes darting between them. His voice was small, fragile. "You know him, Mom." The question cut through the tension like a knife. Clara's lips trembled. She wanted to lie, to bury the truth deeper where it couldn't hurt her son. But how could she? Not when the boy's eyes, the very same hazel green as the man kneeling before him, already knew the answer. "Yes," she whispered. "He's your father." "No." His breath caught, his mouth falling open. The word father was a stranger to him, an idea he had imagined but never known. He turned to Alexander, eyes wet, searching. "Is it true, are you my dad?" Alexander's heart cracked wide open. He brushed a tear from the boy's cheek, his voice trembling as he spoke the words he should have said years ago. "Yes, Noah, I'm your dad, and I'm so sorry I wasn't here sooner." The room spun with emotions. Noah's fragile hope, Clara's bitterness, Alexander's regret. None of them knew what the next moment would bring. But for the first time in years, there was a glimmer of something they thought they had lost forever. Possibility.